You guys requested a deep dive into the Alcasser murders. And when I saw that request come through, I knew right away that we were in for a tough one. It's a case that's just, it's chilling, really.
Absolutely.
3 teenage girls, Miriam, Tony, and Desiree, just vanish, gone.
Yeah.
In 1992,
In Spain.
while hitchhiking to a disco.
It's the kind of case that really gets under your skin, you know?
Yeah.
It's a case that gripped an entire nation, I mean. The search for these girls, everyone knew them as the girls of Alcasser. It was relentless.
I can only imagine.
They were everywhere. Their faces were just plastered across every newspaper, television, you name it, it was there.
Wow.
Everyone was looking for them.
75 days.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the collective hope?
It's hard to fathom.
And then that hope just turning to horror when their bodies were found.
In a shallow grave.
The evidence. Brutal. Just unimaginable brutality. So how do we even begin? How do we unpack something as complex and as tragic as this?
Well, you have to start with what we know. We start at the beginning.
Okay.
Friday night, November 13th, 1992.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Alcasser, Spain.
Alcasser, okay. Set the scene for us. Who are these girls?
They were friends. I mean, they were close. Miriam and Desiree, both 14. And Tony, she was 15.
Okay.
Typical teenagers, enjoyed spending time together. And, you know, like most teenagers, they were excited about a night out.
Right.
At the Cooler Disco.
Right.
Over in Picasent.
Now, hitchhiking, that was their normal way to get around.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think back. It's 1992, especially in rural areas like Alcasser. Hitchhiking was common.
Right.
A way of life, almost a rite of passage, for teenagers especially.
So they head off down this familiar route to the disco. But that last leg of the journey, it almost feels ominous, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, the final stretch, it was a dark road, isolated.
Oh, wow.
And this detail, it's going to become really important as we kind of go through everything.
Okay.
And it really kind of highlights their vulnerability.
Yeah, it's like a scene out of a horror movie, right?
Yes.
Young girls, dark road, and then poof, they're gone.
When do the families realize that something's really wrong here?
When they didn't come home
Yeah,
that night. I mean, any parent would worry.
of course.
At first, maybe they ran away. Maybe they just decided, hey, let's stay out a little later. But there are a few things that didn't fit that.
Oh, really? What were the factors that really made it clear that this was not a typical runaway situation?
They didn't have much money.
Okay,
And the only clothes they had were the clothes on their backs.
right.
All 3 of them, they were known to be responsible,
Okay.
close with their families.
Yeah.
A voluntary disappearance, highly unlikely.
And then the alarm bells start going off. This massive search effort, it was nationwide, wasn't it?
Huge.
Yeah, I remember reading about it.
Volunteers came from all over Spain.
Really?
They joined up with the police. Even the government got involved. It shows you how much this case captured everyone's attention.
Sadly, you know, the search was so intense, there was an accident. A volunteer actually lost their life. That's how desperate everyone was to find them.
That's heartbreaking. And there were so many reported sightings all across the country, giving everyone this false hope.
I know, a lot of leads. Potential sightings.
Yeah.
All over.
Yeah.
Sadly, they all turned out to be false. But there was one lead that seemed really credible.
Okay.
A witness saw the girls getting into a small white car not long after they left Alcasser.
A white car.
Yeah, it became a focal point.
Okay. But then, over 2 months later, that devastating discovery. January 27th, 1993, 2 beekeepers, they're out checking their hives, and they stumble upon just a horrifying scene in this remote area. It's called Barranco de la Romana. What can you tell us about Barranco de la Romana? Why is that location so significant?
Barranco de la Romana, it's desolate, hard to get to. It's far, far from any main roads.
Really?
Yeah, and the remoteness, it raises some questions.
Like what?
How did the girls end up there? Who would even know about this place?
Right.
These are the questions that start swirling.
Yeah. And it gets even stranger. Because I read that when the beekeepers found what they thought was a human arm sticking out of the ground,
Yeah.
the judge was delayed.
Yeah, he was busy with another case.
Really?
Yeah, it's a small detail, but it's telling. It really speaks volumes about the bureaucracy, the challenges that investigators face, even in high-profile cases like this.
And that delay didn't change the outcome, obviously,
Yeah.
because they started excavating the site. And they discovered not 1, but 3 bodies buried there, confirming everyone's worst fears.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the fact that they were found, it was the state that they were in.
The scene was horrific.
Yeah.
The girls' bodies were wrapped in a carpet, piled together, and some of them were decapitated.
Oh my God.
The brutality was shocking. But in all of that chaos, investigators found something.
Okay.
It seemed insignificant.
What was it?
A piece of paper, a medical slip
Okay.
for syphilis treatment.
Wow.
And the name on the slip was Enrique Angles Martins.
Enrique Angles Martins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that medical slip, it became a key piece. It led investigators right to Enrique Angles Martins' home. And that's when things get really complicated.
Okay, so how does one medical slip just completely shift the focus?
So the police, they go to the Angles home. They find several family members, including Miguel Ricard. He was really close with Enrique's brother, Antonio Angles.
Okay, wait, so now there are two Angles brothers.
Yeah,
This is where I get lost.
it gets tangled, yeah.
Yeah.
Antonio, he had a criminal record. Turns out he used his brother's identity, Enrique's, to get that syphilis treatment.
Oh, wow.
So right away, the investigation shifts. Antonio is now the prime suspect.
Okay.
Miguel Ricard, at first they thought he was just a witness.
But if Ricard was just a witness, what was he doing at the house when the police showed up?
Right.
There's got to be something more to it.
You're right to question that. There were things, inconsistencies in Ricard's statements. Things just weren't adding up. Finally, under questioning, he cracks. Confesses to the crimes, implicates himself and Antonio Angles.
Wow, so they finally had a confession. What did he say happened that night? Does he give any answers to what those poor girls went through?
His confession, it was chilling.
I bet.
He describes how he and Antonio Angles, they abducted the girls, drove them to that abandoned house at La Romana, where they found the bodies.
Right.
And then he describes the torture, the brutality. It's hard to even talk about it. It was so horrific.
It's hard to even imagine. But if he confessed and implicated Antonio, why is there still so much mystery around this case?
Well, there's a twist. Ricard, he recants his entire statement. He claims the police tortured him, forced him to admit guilt.
Do you think there's any truth to that? I mean, could the police have, I don't know, resorted to those kind of measures under pressure like that?
It's an interesting point. They did a medical exam right after they arrested him. No signs of torture. So it casts doubt on his claims of coercion, but it also fueled this debate about the confession. Was it really freely given?
Right. Okay, so we have a confession, recanted,
Yeah.
conflicting accounts, and then there's Antonio, the main suspect. Did they ever catch him?
That's the biggest mystery of this whole thing. Miguel Ricard, he was apprehended, stood trial, but Antonio Angles, he vanished. Gone.
How is that even possible?
Without a trace. It's like he disappeared into thin air.
The whole country was looking for him.
I know, they almost caught him at a hair salon in Valencia. He even tried to disguise himself. Dyed his hair.
Really?
But he got away.
Wow.
They launched a huge manhunt. Rewards. Leads across continents. Portugal, Ireland, even Uruguay.
Wow.
But Antonio Angles, he's still out there. To this day, he's on Interpol's most wanted list. A ghost from a horrific crime.
Wow, that's incredible. You mentioned something earlier about a man with the white hair. How does he fit into all this?
Oh yeah, Miguel Nicolas Cortona. He's another rabbit hole of intrigue and unanswered questions. Cortona, he knew Miguel Ricard. They were cellmates. And after Ricard got out of prison, he stayed with Cortona.
Okay, so there's a connection. But how does he become a person of interest in the Alcasser case?
Well, Cortona claimed he was attacked, a home invasion.
Really?
Yeah, a masked man broke into his house, beat him, robbed him,
Oh my gosh.
and he was convinced that the masked man was Antonio Angles.
Hold on. So now we have a home invasion, a masked intruder, and a possible link back to Antonio Angles.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets even more complicated, though. Cortona said there was more. He claimed that he overheard the Angles brothers talking before the murders even happened.
Oh no!
About kidnapping, raping, and killing girls.
That's chilling.
It really is.
It's almost like foreshadowing, like a glimpse into what those poor girls might have endured.
Exactly, despite his claims.
Yeah.
And they did find a white hair at the crime scene. Didn't match any of the victims or the suspects. DNA evidence ultimately excluded Cortona as a suspect.
So we have Ricard, a convicted criminal. We have Angles, a fugitive. And this witness, Cortona, with this story that seems too wild to be true. I mean, what does it all mean? Are we any closer to understanding what actually happened?
It's important to remember, despite Ricard's conviction and the evidence against him, there are still doubts, unanswered questions.
Really? About the official narrative? Like
Yeah.
what doesn't add up?
Well, there are inconsistencies. that have fueled a lot of the debate and the speculation.
Okay, what kind of inconsistencies?
For example, that medical slip, the one that led the police to the Angeles family in the first place. It was found outside. How did it survive for months at the crime scene, out in the elements? A little slip of paper like that, it seems unlikely
It does.
that it would just stay intact for so long.
You'd think it would be, I don't know, damaged.
Right.
Or just degraded by the weather.
And there's more.
Okay, what else?
There's no physical evidence directly linking the girls to that abandoned house. You know where Rickard said the crimes took place?
Okay.
If they were held there?
Right.
For days, like Rickard said. You'd think there'd be something. Fingerprints, hair, fibers, something.
You would think.
And the forensic evidence, it's not clear either.
Oh, really? How so?
For example, hairs were found at the crime scene belonging to at least 5 different people.
Wow.
None of them were the victims or the suspects.
So that means someone else was there.
Right. It makes you wonder who else might have been involved.
Exactly. And then there's the crucifix
Oh, yeah.
that was found. It wasn't in the initial autopsy report.
Right.
Where did that come from?
That's a good question. And it's really added fuel to the fire. For those who believe there's something more to this story.
Okay, so are we saying that there's a chance that Rickard is innocent? Or that there were others involved?
Right. It's not really about guilt or innocence at this point. It's about acknowledging that these discrepancies exist, these unanswered questions. They've created space for different theories. This sense that the official story, it might not be the whole story.
And that's where Miriam's father, Fernando Garcia, comes in.
Yeah.
He's been very outspoken about his criticism of the investigation.
He has. He wants to know the truth about what happened to his daughter.
Of course.
And he's become a central figure in the search for answers.
So what's his theory? What does he think happened?
Garcia believes there was a bigger conspiracy happening. Powerful people covering things up, keeping the real extent of what happened hidden.
Wow.
He's even suggested a connection to snuff films.
Oh my gosh.
Which just adds a whole other layer of darkness to this case.
That's a serious accusation.
It is.
Is there any evidence to support that?
He's presented evidence over the years, but his claims have been met with skepticism, resistance from officials. He's even faced legal trouble. But he keeps fighting for what he believes is the truth. It's made him a symbol of the fight for justice for the Alcasser girls.
This case, it's had such a huge impact on Spain. It goes beyond just a typical true crime story.
Yeah.
Loss, justice, truth. It's all there.
And the media coverage was really something else.
It was crazy, wasn't it?
Before this case, crime reporting in Spain was much more restrained.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But the Alcasser case, with the constant updates and the graphic details, it changed things. It brought in this wave of sensationalized reporting.
And now with the internet, cases like this, they become breeding grounds for speculation.
Absolutely.
Conspiracy theories.
Yeah, the internet gives a platform to those who don't trust the official narrative.
Yep.
And in a case like this, where there are legitimate questions, alternative theories, well, they can really take off.
So where does that leave us? Are we any closer to knowing the truth about what happened to Miriam, Tony, and Desiree? Will Antonio Anglés ever be found?
I don't know. Those are questions that we may never have answers to, but I think by looking at the details, examining the evidence, considering the different perspectives, acknowledging the unanswered questions, we can at least try to understand this tragedy.
What I think is so fascinating is how this case, after all these years, it still captures our imagination. It sparks debate.
Yeah, these stories, they remind us that the truth is complicated, messy. There aren't always easy answers.
Especially with a crime as horrific as this one.
Right.
This deep dive. It's been enlightening and so unsettling. What really gets me is the human element.
I know what you mean.
The families.
Yeah.
This relentless pursuit of justice. It's a mystery that continues to haunt Spain.
And it reminds us that behind every true crime, behind every headline, are real people whose lives have been forever changed.
And sometimes, those stories, they don't have neat endings. They leave us with more questions than answers. I guess that's what keeps us coming back, trying to piece it all together, even though the truth might always be out of reach.
I think you're right.
If this deep dive has shown us anything, it's that the search for truth, it's a long road, full of twists and turns, dead ends. But maybe it's the journey itself, the questioning, the refusal to accept simple answers. That's where the real lesson